Great. Well, first I'll just say, that obviously very thankful and appreciative to be here talking to you guys today, and appreciate you guys zooming in, taking the time. Looking back at last Saturday afternoon, I want to start and just give a lot of credit to South Dakota State, and I thought they came in and had an excellent game plan and made our lives very difficult. So start with hats off to them, and then obviously, frankly surprised and disappointed by our performance out there. Didn't feel that was reflective of the preparation that we had leading up to the game, or the practice dating back to April. So certainly a little bit frustrating, a little bit disheartening to go out and perform that way. But the flip side of that is when you compete, that's ultimately you run the risk of failing, and didn't feel like we executed at a high level. I think that was certainly obvious. The good news is you get on the tape, and the first thing you're worried about is, are we having issues with effort or attitude? That's certainly not our problems right now. Everything that we saw on tape as we studied it, we feel like, we can go back to work and correct. And right now that's what we've been hard at work at, is getting back on top of those things, taking a look at what happened Saturday, what we can do moving forward to perform at a higher level. And then the added challenge of flipping the page and moving to this week, where we're talking about playing Iowa State and what this game means, what this rivalry means. I'd echo what I said about South Dakota State. I have a tremendous amount of respect for this program, for this coaching staff, and for the players that they've brought in over the last 7 years. So we know what kind of game it's going to be. We know what kind of challenge we're in for. And right now, all of our effort is turned towards getting ready to meet that challenge on Saturday afternoon.
Thank you, Coach. Our first question comes from Tom Kakert, Hawkeye Report. Tom?
Hey, Brian. Thanks for doing this. Wanted to ask you about the offensive line play. Seemed to be some struggles. What did you see on film, and what can be corrected in 1 week's time up there?
Yeah, well, I would say that, certainly we struggled at a lot of positions, right? It wasn't just the offensive line, and at some point we all had a hand in it. And I think that's normal, right? We had a lot of first-time players. We knew going in that there were going to be some bumps in the road. But at the end of the day, when you look at and evaluate the film, I think you always got to start with this. Guys are playing hard. They're trying to block guys. They're trying to strike guys. They're trying to hit them. And that's a good place to start and work backwards from. So what you have to do is you have to go in there and you have to look at it. And I would say this, I'd echo this about any position on our offense. What you're trying to do is understand that it's a 12-game season. And you're running a long race here. It's a marathon. It is not a sprint. So what can we take a look at? What can we fix right now and make incremental progress with to get back to playing at the level that we need to play with? I think a lot of things, whether it's first steps, whether it's eyes, whether it's just, kind of fritzing out on a conceptual understanding thing, frankly, I think those can be addressed and fairly quickly as we move forward here.
Next question, Scott Docterman, The Athletic.
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Doing well, Scott.
There's no question that Spencer's put a lot of effort in the off season, whether it's workouts, private workouts, or just the effort that he's put into it has been really high. However, some of the issues that he had on Saturday were similar in the past as far as inaccuracy goes. How do you get those corrected that quickly? Is it simply a fundamental issue with him, or is this something that's kind of beyond correcting and you're going to have to live with it and model your game around him in order to advance the ball?
Yeah, excellent question. And, I appreciate you acknowledging the work that he has put in. And what I would do is I would echo that, but I would take it a step further. I think that's what makes Saturday so disappointing, certainly for him, certainly for any of us. And frankly, I did not think it was reflective of what I'd seen in practice dating back to spring, right, or April, spring ball into March. So, I'd tie it back into my last answer, and I'd say this. I think what's very important for him to understand, for any of us to understand, is that, I referenced it being a 12-game season. Really, you're not talking about 70 plays. You're talking about 840 plays, right? You're not talking about 25 attempts. You're talking about 300 attempts. You're talking about a body of work. And the key is understanding that there's a process. And I thought he had taken a lot of steps forward, But the reality is, right, when we go out and practice in April, probably as a group and individually, our worst practice was our first practice. And then we improved. And same thing when you come back into fall camp, your first practice wasn't your best practice. Hopefully you're improving each and every day out there. I think the gut reaction is to panic, but what you can't do is that. You have to look at it and say, this is a 12-game season. What we need to do is find a way to improve from week 1 to 2, and let's make sure that some of those fundamental things that we had corrected, that we had worked through in the offseason, we can go ahead and push those through into a game environment. And the reality is, when his feet were set and he was delivering the ball the way he should, there weren't any issues. When the fundamentals weren't quite there, there were issues. And I think it gets delved into and analyzed at the quarterback position, and rightfully so. But the reality is, for any of the 11 guys on the field, on either side of the ball or on teams, that's what's always going to come down to. It's going to come down to fundamental issues just general basics of football and technical expertise.
Coach, the next question comes from John Steppe, the Gazette.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Doing well, John.
So, obviously, Spencer's stat line was not great. 44% completion, 1 interception. How much of that do you attribute to him and his fundamental kind of issues that happened on Saturday versus the offensive line not giving him a ton of protection and kind of other shortcomings on the offense?
Yeah, well, it's like I said earlier, John, we all have a hand when things don't go well. We all have a hand in it. And the beauty of football is it's a team sport. I think the quarterback position is unique from this standpoint. You're out there, right? So it is a team sport, but you're going to be the face of the offense. And when things are good, you're going to reap the rewards of that. And when things are bad, you're going to shoulder the blame. And that's part of the responsibility of playing that position. Certainly it's part of the responsibility of coordinating the offense, right? So when things aren't going well, trust me, it's my fault. The buck stops with me. I think the quarterback position is similar from the guys that are on the field, right? So what I would tell you is the expectation is very simple for all 11 players on the field. We all need to do our job, right? If you're one of the guys on the field, you need to do your job. If you're the right tackle and your job is to block the defensive end, we expect you to do that. But if you're the quarterback and your job is to deliver the football on time and in rhythm, then we expect you to do that, right? And what I would tell you is this: whether the right tackle is blocking the heck out of that defensive end or not, it shouldn't matter to the quarterback, the same way that whether or not the quarterback, is delivering the ball on time, in rhythm, and with accuracy, shouldn't matter to the right tackle. So, you ask to, what percentage, it's hard to say, frankly. I felt like after watching the tape, the majority of that game, we had ample opportunity in the pocket to deliver the ball and do what we needed to do as far as making the read and getting the ball out to the correct guy on time. So is the protection perfect? No. But if you're waiting around for perfect protection, you're going to be sorely, you're not going to be happy with it ever, right? So I would just tell you this. I think the solution is very simple. We all need to do our job better at the end of the day. And that's really what we're focusing on right now.
Next question, Coach, comes from Corey Bratta, Story County News.
Coach Brian, appreciate you taking the time, first of all, for this Zoom call. I do appreciate access. I'm not going to surprise you or shock you. I'm going to stick with the quarterback. I'm just curious. You obviously are not naive to the fans that are calling for a change at quarterback, and that's been the case for some time. We talked about that during the offseason. But given your comfort level with all 4 guys, and I know this is somewhat hypothetical, but what would it take to necessitate a change in your mind in the game? Talk about just Saturday, for instance. What would it take? Would it take an injury to Spencer? Would it be a plethora of picks? What do you think it would take?
Yeah, Corey, I appreciate the question, but I got to tell you, I don't want to get into hypotheticals. The goal every week is very simple. We're trying to win the football game. And so the decisions that we make throughout the course of a game, throughout the course of a week, throughout the course of a season, they simply come down to what we feel gives us the best chance to win. And the reality is, we've seen both quarterbacks play. Both guys have played well. Both guys probably have times in their career they wish they had back. With Spencer, we can look as recently as a few days ago. But the reality is they've both demonstrated that they can do it. And what we need to do is find consistency at that position. I can just assure you that what we're going to do is we're going to continue to go with the guy, whomever that is, whenever that is, that's going to give us the best chance to win football games. And it goes back to my answer to John a second ago. Ultimately, we need everyone doing their job. And the job at quarterback is pretty well defined. So, at the end of the day, the standard is that you do your job. If we're not doing our job, then either we got to make changes and find someone who can, or we got to change the definition of what the job is.
Next question, Coach. Chad Leistico, Des Moines Register.
Hey, Brian, I have one question before my real question.
So is this a fake question?
No.
A warm-up question?
A warm-up question.
Okay.
Did you want to come out and talk today, or did you just get drawn the short straw of the first guy here? Because it's obviously a very heated week out there on the outside.
Sure.
I'm just curious if you wanted to speak to what happened last week here or not.
I was, I happened to be up.
Okay.
And, ultimately, look, my responsibility is to stand in front of you guys and be accountable for what we do. So there's really nowhere to hide, in my opinion. So if I'm up, I'm up. And certainly I wish it was after a better week. I wish I was coming out here and we were talking about how great we were. But the reality is it'd be somewhere in the middle there too. So, this is what it is right now, as some people I know would say.
Okay, gotcha. And then just secondly, when you have the offensive line issues that certainly showed up on tape as well, how much advantage could a more mobile quarterback potentially give you short term in that situation? Is that something you guys analyzed this week in terms of a decision? Yeah,
sure. I mean, that's absolutely a fair question. Right. And so what we're trying to do is, again, like I said before, you're evaluating what are you asking guys to do? And the reality is, like I said, whether there are protection issues or not, do we have ample time to deliver the ball and get it where it needs to be? And if the answer to that was just simply no, 95% of the time, then I think we would have to evaluate where we wanted to go moving forward. But even when the protection's not clean, decisions need to be made faster. The ball needs to be released faster, and that's the bottom line.
Next question, Scott Dockerman.
Yeah, Brian, throughout most of the offseason, Kirk mentioned would bring up Alex repeatedly. We have two good quarterbacks. We feel we can win with both. We have won with both. What could he bring if he was put into that role as more than just a short starter because of Spencer Rufus' injury? And you have that kind of faith that he can come in if needed, whether it's because of an injury like last year or to be the number one starter. You have faith that he could do that.
Yeah, I do. I have faith in both players. I do, and that's unwavering. Even after Saturday, I feel very strongly about both guys, and I certainly understand, the thought. But the reality is, at the end of the day, we view the quarterback position, in a way that we don't want to be juggling guys. We don't want to do that. I don't think it's like being a pitcher in baseball, where some days you just don't have your stuff. I was watching a documentary about the old Avalanche Red Wings series, right? And there was that Patrick Waugh game in Montreal that got him to Colorado, where the coach left him in there and he gave up like 11 goals and it just wasn't his night, right? I don't know if I view the quarterback position that way, where you just pull a guy to grab some confidence, and you don't want to put somebody in a bad situation. You don't want to take somebody out of a situation that you feel like they can work their way through. So the reality is we do have confidence in both players. Alex has gone in there and he is, coming in a relief role, and he's gone in a starting role and won games for us. And the reality is Spencer has done the same thing. So we feel strongly that both guys can do it. Right now we're trying to go with the guy that we feel gives us the absolute best chance to win right now at this moment.
Coach, we have 4 more hands raised. Let's
Sure.
take 4 more questions. Back to Corey.
Last question for me, Coach. I counted maybe 3, maybe 4 waste downs, quote unquote waste downs. I'm talking second and short on Saturday, and I believe you guys ran the ball on every one of those. I'm just curious to get your take on waste downs. What's your philosophy or your motto on taking advantage of those with play action? And was that more of a result of kind of keeping it, I hate to use the word vanilla, but you get my gist here. Or what's your philosophy on waste downs?
Sure. Here was my philosophy on Saturday on waste downs. I didn't think we had very many waste downs based on how we were playing and functioning, right? So ultimately, football is a simple game offensively. You need to possess the ball, and then you need to score the ball. And, so at the end of the day, when you look at a play calling decision, you're not wrong. There certainly is a thought process from time to time about a 2nd and 1, taking a shot, or sometimes on a sudden change coming across midfield, taking a shot. Things of that nature. I think sometimes that's really good play calling. Sometimes that's really bad play calling, because the defense, those coaches, they understand all the same theories as well. And the reality is, for most of the game, unfortunately, on Saturday, we were trying to get something started, and we were able to do that with a little bit in the play action game. We hit the dig route to Arlen, which got a drive going there in the third quarter and gave us some rhythm. That's what you're trying to find all game. So I think it's an excellent question. Probably on 2nd and 1 on Saturday, just didn't feel that was the opportunity, but did use some 1st and 10s that way. And you're trying to stay. I don't know that unpredictable is the word. But you certainly don't want to develop tendencies or an MO when it comes to, hey, in every situation we do this, in every situation we do that. And I'd say the equivalent, I think it's a very good question, Corey, the equivalent is, do you stick a run in on a 3rd and 8 from time to time, trying to sneak one in, right? So just always playing that game. But full disclosure, I certainly didn't feel like there were many waste downs on Saturday. That was one of those luxuries we didn't possess on Saturday afternoon.
Kennington Smith, Des Moines Register.
Good morning, Coach. Appreciate you taking the time. I have a slight warm-up question before I get to my actual question.
Sure.
Will Jacob Bostic be available on Saturday?
Yeah, we're hopeful that all the guys that are out right now will be back and be available, but I can't predict that right now, nor would I care to. I'll leave that to the head coach.
All right. As far as the rest of the receiving core, what week 2 jump do you expect from guys like Alec Wick and Jack Johnson, who played for the first time last Saturday, and with Brody Brecht on the depth chart now? How much is he going to figure into the game plan on Saturday?
Yeah, well, we're trying to get everybody involved, certainly, and I do expect a jump from week 1 to week 2 with some of the guys you mentioned. I thought Alec did a nice job, went in there, and we had a 3rd down to him at the end of the game that certainly would have been a terrific catch. It wasn't a good ball. The placement was poor. He really had to extend for that one. Otherwise, I think we'd be talking about that completion as a conversion, and he may walk out feeling just a little bit differently about his contributions. But feel like both those guys, you mentioned Jack as well, they've practiced very well dating back to the spring. They've made a lot of progress, made a lot of gains. And like I said, with the quarterback position or the line position, I'd expect to see those gains happen in the course of a season as well, right? Game 1 to 2, the same way practice 1 to 12. We saw some of that. So I'm excited to see that. And, Brody's a guy that unfortunately missed a lot of time in fall camp and has been able to work his way back in over the past couple weeks. So I certainly anticipate his role increasing and his contributions increasing as well.
Don Steppe.
With the injuries at wide receiver, whether it be Keegan, Nico, Vines, etc., how much has that changed how you've been game planning with kind of the personnel that you have left?
Well, I could sit here, John, I could bemoan missing talented players, right? But the reality is, as unfortunate as it is, and it is unfortunate, it's football. And in this game, it's a tough, violent game. It's physical. And things happen. And over the course of the season, you're going to have to deal with injuries. You're going to have to deal with, missing personnel. And what you have to do is find a way to win the next football game. You have to find a way to match up with who you're playing. You have to figure out who your best players are, find ways to get them involved, get them targeted. That was one thing that I was pleased with coming out of last week. I felt like we targeted the right guys, got most of the balls directed to the players we wanted to do that with. And now the challenge remains the same on a week-to-week basis. How do we do that against who we're matching up with? We're going to play a very good opponent on Saturday that has very good coaches, that is going to have a very good plan. So we better make sure we've got our T's crossed and our I's dotted when it comes to finding those matchups. But at the end of the day, all we can do is try to work to be more effective. Be more effective on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and all those personnel issues. Understand that that's part of football. It always has been. It always will be, and we'll face more of that as the season goes on. That's not going to change. Hopefully we'll get the cavalry coming at receiver at some point, but that's no guarantee that more injuries can't happen at that position or other positions.
Coach, we'll finish up with Tom Caker.
Brian, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about Logan Jones. You're an old center. What did you see from him in that first start for him, and what did you tell him after the game?
Sure, I saw a lot of good things, and I saw a lot of things that we need to clean up. And quite frankly, Tom, that's to be expected. Especially playing that position. And what I worried about for a few of our players on Saturday, obviously there's some first timers. But what I've been very pleased with this group, these are guys that care. These are guys that want to do well. These guys are guys that have pride, and they want to go out. And most importantly, a guy like Logan Jones, he doesn't want to lay anybody down. And so what I said to him after the game is that he didn't do that. He went out, he played his first game, he got his feet wet, he played at the center position, and there's mistakes. There's always going to be mistakes. The snap. I got to tell you, I've seen that happen a few times, and I've felt one of those before. I kind of know what it feels like when you clip part of your buttocks on the shotgun snap. It's not a good feeling. It's definitely not a good feeling. And when you do it in Kinnick Stadium, it's a really bad feeling. And I don't mind telling you, it does give me some not so fond memories when we have snap issues. My first major one was Arizona State. We were playing Arizona State in 2003 out there. I think it was week 3, maybe week 2. It was a night game, and we snapped the ball. I rolled it back there. It didn't hit my butt. I rolled it back to Nate Chandler, and they met at the quarterback, had a brief meeting at the quarterback, and the ball ended up in the air a couple of times, all the way back in our end zone. I ended up recovering it myself because I figured that if we gave up 6, that might be the end of my career. Luckily, we only gave up 2. It's the most points I've ever scored in a game. Unfortunately, it's for the other team. And I do recall sitting on that bench for the better part of 2 quarters, not saying a word to anybody. We were down 2-0 for about 2 more series. We ended up winning the game 21-2. I ruined Coach Parker's shutout. But certainly, I know how those things feel. And the reality is, Logan Jones is going to be just fine. We have a lot of guys like Logan Jones that are going to be just fine. You work through some of these things, and you learn how to go back to work and fix things and improve them. That's what he's focused on right now, and I expect him to continue to grow as the season progresses.
Coach, thank you for the time, and best of luck on Saturday.
Thank you guys very much. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brian.